Hi there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations for veterans and first responders who are looking for holistic ways to support their life. So these conversations are designed for you to tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to heal, transform, and live your very best life. So the guest that I have for you all today is the amazing Will Gold, and he is from Dig In Health Co. Welcome, Will.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. So I actually found you on social media, and I don't even know, I think it was through like one of the
Young
Yandina RSL
veterans,
pages
maybe.
or something like
Okay.
that. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, I haven't seen really anyone in the veteran or first responder space talking into the nutritional side of it. And it is like one of the top, three paramount things that I think is so important for us in service, out of service, just in life in general. So if you can introduce yourself, what you're doing and why you're passionate about it, I'm just going to let you free flow.
Yeah, I don't know how I'll keep this short because it's a long-winded story, I guess, of how I got to where I am. I'll probably take it back to where I grew up, and I'll try and keep that part short. I'm from Caloundra on the Sunshine Coast.
Nice area of the world.
So I grew up around the beach. So I think the beach has always and still is a huge influence in my life. And I think from that lifestyle, I always had a appreciation for the environment, beaches, clean outdoor spaces. Left high school, straight into the Air Force. My mum's ex-army. She did 3 years. My pa was in World War II. He fought northern coast of New Guinea and Borneo, and my great granddad, so his father, was light horse in World War One.
Awesome.
So it was pretty inevitable I would leave school and join the military. I got a trade, aircraft mechanic, did that for 6 years. Like most people, got sick of being told what to do. Didn't get to travel overseas because the squadron I was at was only was a non-operational squadron, just meaning it didn't deploy overseas.
Yeah.
So I left and then decided to retrain, and it was probably through my military career and being so young. I joined at 17. A lot of influence from the older guys that I looked up to. A lot of them I probably saw as big brothers. They were either the boozers or the real healthy ones. They were kind of two distinct people to follow at 17. Probably followed both at some point,
Yeah.
but took a lot of influence from the healthy guys and the fit guys, and learned a lot about my own health, and nutrition naturally was a part of that. And I just was a natural curiosity. I don't think there was anything specific about nutrition. Took that with me that curiosity with me as I left. And then when I decided what would I do post defense life, retraining as a dietitian seemed really interesting. The more I looked into it, the more I thought, I really need to give this a go. I don't think swinging spanners and coming home covered in fuel and oil was for me.
Does have a distinct smell to it.
Yeah, working with AVTER, it definitely does. So through my uni degree, I kind of naturally stumbled across Indigenous health it's I guess pretty upsetting, but not surprising to see how little it was covered in a 4-year bachelor's degree. I think realistically it was 2 weeks, and which I guess goes to show like how far we've got to go in that space. Yeah. But through that, learning about Indigenous health and that it is the true holistic view of health, because it incorporates the individual, the community, and the environment. And it's something about being a coastie and a surfer and enjoying those spaces just connected with me. And I thought I've got to look into this more. I ended up instead of doing a research honors, I took an elective, which was an alternative to doing the research honors in the final year, and spent, how long did I go for? 6-ish weeks in Broome, and
cool.
working, not supervising, sorry, working, observing the dietitians up in Northwest WA and getting the opportunity to go to some very remote communities, fly in, fly out only, on a little 6-seater Cessna.
What an opportunity. I have heard the land up there is just magical.
Yes, and it would just really open my eyes to a lot of what really goes on the ground, both the good and the bad. But that, I guess that's where I cut my teeth as a dietitian, because I after my time there, one of the allied health companies said, when you graduate, come on back and we'll try and find a space for you. So naturally, within 6 months of graduating, I was living in Broome. And so through that journey and that experience, I had some hard truths to face about where my passions lied and what it takes to really make a positive change in that community. And let's say it was pretty humbling, because the challenges there are very complex, to say the least.
Multi-layered.
Yes. And so I came back to the East Coast. One of the things I learned is that you kind of need to be connected more to just, I like the idea of this. If you're going to work in health long term and try and work with a community, and I didn't have that connection to that community, and I naturally found my way back to the Sunshine Coast, where I've set up my business. And I guess took me another 3-4 years working in the Aboriginal health space after leaving Broome, that I realized I had this amazing talent for working with people with complex mental health, even as a dietitian, just naturally, because so many of my clients that were coming for chronic disease related nutrition advice, underlying this was more common than not some form of complex mental health trauma, or intergenerational trauma is probably the more accurate term, that complicated their ability to address other, say, lifestyle factors. So then, starting my own business in the last 2 years, I realized not only do I need to be geographically located to a community that means something to me, being the Sunshine Coast, is where I finally found myself working back in the veteran space and realizing,
we need you.
I've actually got a lot to give from a very different perspective, but also with the politics of Aboriginal health, I didn't have skin in the game. I'm not Aboriginal. But when it comes to veteran health, I'm like, hang on, I'm 4th generation. I grew up knowing this is like a huge part of my family and our history. And as things appear in the media, I realize, hey, this is important to me, and to do something different than the normal allied health model that is being replicated again and again and again.
That doesn't seem to work.
Yes, and
for
so
everyone.
That is where I'm at in terms of a new business, working hard to get recognized as a veteran in the veteran health space, trying to do something different, and I'm on my way, let's say.
Yes, I love it.
Still getting there. So
I love it.
Hope that didn't go on too long, but
no, that was perfect, and it addressed so many things, because it shows like where you sort of set your foundations in the space, and then what's built you to bring you back to this. And much like yourself, I sort of deviated into the sort of conscious community where I felt like I wanted to be, but then whoop, here I am back. Because veterans and first responders are the ones I really want to work with, because like you said, and I've never actually thought of it in that way, we've got skin in the game. Absolutely, we do. So what is it that you most sets you apart? Like, what's unique in the way that you're bringing across your skills and knowledge, as opposed to, say, a generic GP assigned nutritionist?
Yeah, so I would never have said I was the dux of my uni degree. I'm pretty happy being mid-range with my clinical knowledge. I worked bloody hard to get that degree and get those passes, because at 27 or 28, finding myself doing first year chemistry was like,
oh my God.
I did like year 10 science at best, and that had been over 10 years prior, so 12 years. So
well done you. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I did. I had my doubts. Let's say I worked my ass off in those first 12 months to get across the line in that. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot more intelligent people in my degree, that's for sure. But they didn't have life skills.
Yeah.
And the number one thing I always find that sets me apart is building rapport and connecting with people. And it's just being real and knowing how to. Being real is different to different people. You know, I'll have, you know, the 80, 90-year-old, you know, great grandmothers that, you know, these petite little frail things, and you know, you got to mind your P's and Q's, and then get the guy who's just discharged. And I've actually got a lady who's, you know, her husband passed on a while ago and passed on his gold card. He was World War II, and you know, she's a super lovely lady.
Yeah.
I can't be as real to her as I am to a guy that's ex-army, just come out and covered in tattoos. But there's a different way to communicate with people, and being able to and comfortable to. And I find a lot of the younger dietitians and new grads, they kind of just have their scripts. They don't know any different, and it's not their fault. They're not taught that at uni. You're taught to be very clinical, and here's a set of questions you go through, and it's the same for everyone. And they just don't realize that they can lose the person on the other side in the first 5 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. I've personally experienced that with a dietitian. But what you're talking into there, I just wanted to touch on it, that adaptable intelligence that you've got, where you can go, you know, emotionally just from one set of people to the other. Like, you could probably speak to a whole room of people in an aged care centre, but then you could speak to a whole room of people, you know, that have just come out of a ACP, you know, combat training thing, and they want to know about how to better perform through things. So I think that is a skill we've learnt in defense, where we're able to, you know, teach and be showing the way and guiding people from that sort of I don't know, leadership space, I guess, and that those life skills and that adaptable intelligence that you spoke into.
Yeah, I think I found a passion really early on in my defense career for educating others. I think that's where a lot of this come from. And I got my trade, got signed off on my trade at 21, 22, and or 21, corporals at 22. And so at 22, I was running a crew of 6 apprentices. And I was like, I'm 22.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, some people thought I was, you know, some new sergeants or whatever would come in and think I've just come out of recruits. And I'm like, oh, hang on, you're a trade supervisor. So that was a real, that was also rough because I was so young, and, you know, got plenty of shit hung on me the whole defense career, being so young. That just comes with it. So it teaches you a lot. It's a good personality builder. But the experience of having a diverse crew of guys from all backgrounds and supporting them and educating them, or something I just really enjoyed it. Yeah, and it's just never ever left me. Like, whether I'm talking to a group, I go to the local RSLs and do group presentations and talks. I love it.
When you do those group presentations, what are you teaching? Like, what is your mission to bring into this space?
I think the one thing that comes to mind is it shouldn't be difficult, and it's made difficult because everyone has something to say about nutrition. Everyone eats, so everyone's got an opinion on it. There is so much money in this space. So there's the weight loss industry, pharmaceuticals want their share of the, you know, the chronic disease market. Like, there's just so many people competing in this space, and then you've got the influencers and all the rest of it. And the messages get really complicated. What do you need to do for your health? And over time, I've just refined my message down and tried to simplify it, because it actually is simple. It's just been lost in all the white noise of all these competing interests. And so I just really try and simplify it for people. And that message is take control of your food, of what you put in your mouth. Don't leave it to companies who are trying to make money off you. So that is easier said than done for some people, but that's where it starts. Is whole foods, cooking from scratch.
And you know, just wanting and choosing to bring your body back into homeostasis, like back to its natural state, is like, I actually can control that through what I put into my mouth to some level. So why wouldn't I?
And I think when people realize that it is it is fairly straightforward. There's a few little tricks and tips along the way that I will obviously give them to help that process. But the change in people of all shapes, sizes, ages, whatnot, it's what drives me to keep doing what I'm doing, is that it can be done. It is relatively straightforward with the right support, and the outcome is really, really noticeable for some people.
Huge. Yeah.
And across so many different conditions.
Yeah, the mental health stuff as well. I know, here's an example, me, I'm in a rush, I get up, I have a coffee and, you know, a biscuit instead of eating actual food, or I just have a coffee and no food at all. You know, by 9 or 10 o'clock, I'm an irritable, cranky pants who can't even concentrate. So it's like, and you know, I'm having negative thoughts about, you know, I'm doing too much, I'm this, I'm that, I can't think of things. It's like, yeah, but if I'd have had breakfast and probably had like a lemon water or something, I wouldn't be feeling these feelings right now.
Yeah, it's and as I've done more in the mental health space, so that's, I suppose, for the veteran groups I talk to, I do talk a lot now about gut health and mental health. It's a big part of, I guess, the focus there, and the there's a lot of research trying to figure out which comes. It's like a chicken and egg scenario with mental health and gut health. Do you eat crappy foods and you get that real ends up in deteriorating mental health, or does your deteriorating mental health lead you to poor food choices?
Oh, the pondering.
Yes, it is, and I think they're both right. To be honest, I think the research is showing that.
Or cyclic, you know, it doesn't end. It's both.
Yeah, and that's also really interesting in the research that shows when you address the mental health from a dietary perspective, there is significant benefits that people have found, and also when you address gut health from a mental health perspective. So treating the mindset for something like IBS. So there's some interesting work with hypnosis that has been shown to alleviate, through focusing on the stress and the anxiety, to alleviate IBS. So therein lies, you know, there are two ways to go at it, and they address both ends or both parts of that cycle.
Yeah, I love what you've just spoken into. And so years ago, Army Kate used to be like gut health, as it just means eating great and my stomach being healthy. So I obviously know differently now, but for those that are still in that mindset of, I don't know what gut health is just having a clean stomach, like explain it in a way that it's so much more than that, and what your interpretation of it is.
Yes, it can get really complicated, so I've got to be mindful here not to use too much of the medical jargon with it. And I guess I probably start with defining what is the gut. Like, what are we talking about when we talk about the gut? And so, you know, we're trying to use some really simple terms. When a dietitian says the gut, I guess we could possibly be talking about multiple things all at once. So the stomach itself I refer to as the front end loader washing machine. It's what churns everything up and gets it ready for absorption. So you're breaking down all those chewy things ready to absorb all your nutrients, and anything that's left is going into the small and then large intestine, and that's where the magic really happens. And so, without getting too complicated, what's left in the large bowel or large intestine, which is the last point before exit, is where about 90 to 95% of the microbial activity, or the bacteria and viruses, and if you're lucky enough, parasites and worms, coexist in our large bowel. And when we're talking about gut health, we're generally speaking to that portion of the digestive system. So not the esophagus, the food pipe, not the stomach itself, which is often interchangeably referred to as the gut, or the small intestine where we absorb most things. It's the large bowel, large intestine, the very last part where all that bacteria predominantly live. And so there are so many interactions and chemical things going on down there, food being presented to the lining of the small intestine, and vice versa. There's all sorts of communications going on. So it's a very, very complex area, and we still don't even know what's down there. So when we refer to the gut being that portion of our bowel where all those bacteria live, researchers still don't even understand what's down there. And what we do know is, of all the viruses and bacteria living in our gut and on other surfaces, there's more of them than there are of us by number. It's pretty incredible that we're more something else than we are. So we're this full-on coexisting organism, and it controls a lot more than what people think.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know how many times I've heard even people from our community talk into the fact that, I've had this such and such weird stomach pain for however long, blah, blah, blah. Doctors have, accounted it to stress and PTSD and anxiety and all those things. And then they've discovered, I've got this gut parasite that I caught in such and such at such and such time. And they've worked with someone like yourself or a professional to do a gut cleanse or a detox or something. And all of it's just gone like that. It's like, oh man, why don't we look at this health thing holistically to support those scenarios instead of the cookie cutter? Oh, it's just your PTSD. Don't worry about it. You just got to reduce your stress, lose weight, do more, exercise. So much more than that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're in a tough time where diagnostics are really just not up to scratch with where we would obviously like them to be. So being able to look into someone's gut, into their bowel, and have a look at that bacteria and see what's going on, we really don't have adequate tools at our disposal. So that's what actually makes this really hard. We're learning so much about the bacteria down there and how they influence even thought patterns, and particularly cravings from my perspective. Some people don't realize you're getting hijacked by these little bacteria in your gut, which are causing or can be causing a lot of your cravings. But how do we tell? How do we actually figure out who's who in the zoo down there and how to deal with them? So that is the tough part of what we're doing.
Now, we want to hear more from you. So I'm going to chat to you afterwards, but there's definitely going to be some trainings or further educational things where we get together with you and, pick your brain, and maybe people can have some questions and stuff that they send in. But I love just the little bit that you've touched on today. But the final question I have for you is, if people wanted to get serious about their nutrition and they really have been sort of teetering on the edge of making this big decision and putting themselves first and choosing themselves and getting curious, as this podcast is called The Curious Collective, what advice would you have for them from your standpoint and what you've seen already to date?
Oh, that's a hard one. My brain is kind of going a million different directions here of where to start. I think you kind of nailed it in the question. Is be curious. Be curious about it. Is be open to different viewpoints. And the thing I would caveat all of that is no one has all the answers. The human body is extremely complex. Be open to different practitioners from different modes of health. They all have something to offer in some way, shape, or form. You just got to be open to hearing it. I think, without getting into too many specifics of say who I might follow on social media, and there are lots of professionals and researchers in the gut health space. So I guess it depends on the perspective, but I think be curious and look broadly. But also just be honest with your own health and
listen to your body, perhaps, is a really good one.
And it's like, if you know that you could do better, well, take the time and focus on it. I guess it's understanding so much of what I do is asking people why they want to improve their health. It's like, it's all well and good to set these intentions and New Year's resolutions, but you've got to answer that question of why is your health important to you? Maybe it's bigger than yourself. It's kids, family, other things, but I think that's being curious, but also knowing why you want to go down this pathway. I think a lot of people come to me because my doctor sent me. Why are you here? Oh, my doctor sent me. I'm like, that's a great start. If you don't know why you want to improve your health, what you want, answer what you want to get out of it first. What have you got to gain? How do you see your life improving? And I often say to people, don't let that be a negative. So I know for a lot of the vets out there, a lot of guys and girls in pain from joint inflammation, that sort of stuff. Pain's a great short-term motivator. It's not a very good long-term motivator. And so I'm often working with people in the early stages of saying, you need a positive motivator. If you don't have that positive mindset and what you hope to be better, what you want to enjoy more of, or improve in your life that you can look forward to, you're going to end up in a cycle of just chasing your tail with your health. So once you answer those questions, you probably then will know where to look.
And I feel like you get to that point where, when you do answer those questions for yourself and get clarity, is you actually start to choose yourself. So, instead of reaching for that thing, the thing that irritates your gut and makes you feel sick for days because you think you want it, you go, actually, I'm going to choose myself, and I'm going to acknowledge that doesn't make me feel great. So I'm not going to do that today,
And that's probably the next thing, is that once you know why you want to make positive changes, very natural progression onto the recognition of what's going on in your own lives and the choices you make. And for a lot of people, especially with kind of various forms of mental health, it's just acknowledging what's going on. And I think that's an important point, is a lot of people is not to beat yourself up either way of whatever the choices you are. They just are what they are. You need to move past that and stop blaming X or Y, and just acknowledge, this is where I'm at, this is what's going on for me, and I want something better. And hopefully the path starts to show itself.
Oh, I love it. I'll say, so we're getting curious, we're getting to know our why, we're asking more questions, and then we're going to choose ourselves and come to that point where everything's just a new awareness, and we're going to acknowledge that where we are is fine, and what do we want next? Love it. So good. I love everything that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sure that we will do collaborative works together in the future, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks for the time.
See you later.